First impression was very surprised. Wow, what a beautiful place. And just when you kind of came in and we started talking, and just the aesthetics of the place is very beautiful. The simplicity of it and the openness and the peace. There's no walls, and that nature is right. Nature is the backdrop to everything that's going on here. It's very, very striking. And I think that I can imagine that it's quite powerful for people who live in Bangkok, in a very built-up city, to come here, and so very impactful for me. And what I also really appreciate is the high level of design. Often you can come to places that are they're more. There's maybe what I would call a school of design or eco-thought that's more working with what we've got, and so people kind of try to work with materials that are just found or that kind of thing. And I think it's really, there's an important piece around aesthetics, because we need to touch everybody in the world, and for some people beauty really, really matters. It's really an important way of engaging people, and so I think what you're doing here is very striking. And of course, I prioritize going into the river, and the water wheel is that too. Is that like you saw on the faces of everybody, all the participants, when they saw the water wheel. Partly because just this afternoon, two different design groups drew a water mill in their designs, and they didn't know they were going to see one, within hours of presenting their projects. So I think that was quite moving for them to draw it and be trying to talk about it, and then whoa, there it was. So I think that's a powerful piece, and maybe more. You could do more of that. Is showing these old technologies and saying they're not dead, they're alive, and they're very useful. I mean, here you are pumping water without any electricity. It's just such a perfect example of a whole system. The water makes the water move to then move itself into the rice paddy fields. So the future of humans on Earth is that we need to very, very rapidly transform ourselves. It's hard to know how quickly the infrastructures that we have set up, based on what I like to talk about is we created a lifestyle based on oil for the last 150 years. It's like we've been designing using one manual, and now we need to change the manual very quickly so that we're living in a way that is resilient, and that when the oil and other resources that we're dependent upon, that we've been mining out of the surface of the earth, when those are no longer available to us, and those are the foundation of our human way of life, when those are no longer available, we have to very quickly have another way of living. And I think our challenge is that we are so disconnected, because so many of us have left the land in the last generation, maybe in Thailand, but even more problems in the developed north, because people have been away from the land for 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. They no longer have the earth in their hands, and they no longer know how to work on the earth, with the earth, and they no longer know how to look at ecosystems and see what's going on. And so we have lost a language, a very important language, and we need to relearn it as quickly as possible. And I think a very good place to start is with the children, because they still have that openness and curiosity. It's harder with the adults because we've got a narrower focus or perspective. So I think another part is that what I like to talk about is rapid prototyping. So we need to just start doing things, which I think that's what you're doing. And because it's only in the doing of taking the action and trying it out that we start to learn. I think that the most important place is learning with the growing of food, and also putting ourselves for periods of time into wildness. So, going into the mountain and being there for a day or 3 days or 4 days by ourselves in silence and just observing. just looking and learning from what's going on with nature. And in part, it's about connecting with the ecosystem that's outside. It's also about connecting with the inner ecosystem, because that's really going to be, because things may change very quickly, it could be uncomfortable for many people who are used to a consumer modern way of living. And so if we have some practices that can center us and ground us and help us know who we really are, then the transitions can be much easier. Much easier. We'll be able to be more conscious around how we're making the changes. Another part is that I've shifted my perspective away from the idea of sustainability, because it's a word that's being used, certainly in New York City, where I do a lot of work. It's being used in a very twisted way. Suddenly everything is about sustainability, and everything is green and sustainability. And when I think about that word in the English language, I think, we've got to sustain. It's kind of like, it feels like, we've got to hold on to everything just as it is. And that's actually not what we want to do. What we want to do is put human beings back into the ecosystem. We need to make ourselves equal with everything that we share this planet with. And we need to look at how can we start to act in a way that is regenerative. So how can we act in a way that starts to help the natural ecosystems do what they do best, which is just restore themselves. If we get out of the way, nature will take care of herself. But we need to meet some of our needs, like feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, have shelter. And so how can we act in a way that allows the abundance of nature to just keep on doing? And I think one of the best examples of what is regenerative is when you take a flower and it makes the seed pod, and you pour the seeds on your hand, and seeds in your hand, and you know that plant came from one seed. And so you know that in your hand now you have maybe 1,000 more flowers or 1,000 more fruits. And so that's the power of nature, is this, that it naturally creates abundance if we allow it, if we can find our way of putting ourselves into the system and supporting that to happen. And so to me, everything needs to become regenerative. It's like, how do we live our lives? How do we develop daily practices in our lives that give us more vitality, by eating healthy food that's not full of toxins, by being out in nature. And then the same thing, how do we create our communities? How do we interact with one another? Is our relationship regenerative? Are we, when I communicate with you, am I giving you energy? Is it an uplifting experience, or is it an experience where you feel a loss of energy? So this is this kind of piece around the awareness of how we actually interact. And you could take that right into business. How do we do business with each other? Is it a relationship where people feel oppressed and they've lost any kind of vitality, or is it a place where people feel curious and engaged in what they want to do? Because when you're curious and engaged, that's regenerative. Your life force is moving. You want to create and participate, be part of the community. And I think that community is, so my interest in eco-village, I don't live in one, and yet I believe that our future, our thriving human future will be in community. In some form or other, we need to start learning how to work together, and in a way that's different from a corporation or an organization. Working together needs to come with a heart, and we need to maybe open more space for feeling. And so that's why I became